The music festival hall was alive with excitement. Musicians from around the world had gathered to showcase their talents, and the air buzzed with energy. There were people chatting and laughing, but the moment anyone approached the grand piano in the corner, a hush seemed to fall. Everyone knew that when someone played there, magic could happen. Among the crowd was a young pianist who had earned a reputation for being bold and fearless. He had traveled across countries to perform in prestigious events, and his name had become known among music lovers. He was confident, sometimes even too confident, but that was part of his charm. His eyes scanned the room, searching for someone who could truly challenge him. Then he saw her. She was sitting at a smaller piano, quiet, almost blending into the background. Her movements were calm, precise, and her fingers danced lightly over the keys even as she merely practiced. She did not have the flashy presence of other performers, yet something about her caught his attention. The way she moved, the way her eyes focused, and the way the room seemed to respond to her even before she played made him pause. The young pianist felt a surge of excitement. Here was someone who might actually push him, someone who could break the confidence that had always been his armor. He walked closer, making sure his presence was noticed. The crowd around them parted slightly, sensing that something interesting was about to unfold. He cleared his throat and spoke with a mixture of curiosity and challenge. "I hear you play beautifully. How about a piano duel? Just you and me? Right here, in front of everyone? Let's see whose music speaks louder." The Japanese woman looked up at him. Her face was calm, almost unreadable, but her eyes held a quiet intensity. She did not respond immediately. The room felt heavier, the air charged with anticipation. People nearby leaned in, curious about how she would react. This was not just a challenge. It was a test of courage, skill, and emotion. After a moment, she nodded slowly. Her hands rested gently on the keys, and a small smile appeared on her lips. It was not a smile of arrogance or defiance. It was a smile of acceptance, of understanding the unspoken words behind the challenge. The young pianist felt a thrill run through him. This was it. The duel was about to begin. The crowd started to gather around. Word had spread quickly that a duel was taking place, and soon, every empty spot in the hall was filled with eager faces. Some were there for entertainment, some out of curiosity, and some because they could feel that something extraordinary was about to happen. He took a deep breath and sat down at the grand piano, his fingers hovering above the keys. He could feel the familiar tension of excitement mixed with nerves. He had never lost in a public setting before, and the thought of someone possibly outshining him was both thrilling and unnerving. She sat at her piano, her posture perfect, her fingers lightly brushing the keys. There was a sense of calm around her, as if she had been waiting for this moment all her life. Her presence was serene, yet it carried an invisible strength. The young pianist could not help but notice that she did not seem nervous at all. Instead, she seemed completely in tune with herself and the music that was about to come. The audience fell silent. The usual chatter and movement had stopped, replaced by an attentive, almost reverent stillness. Every person present was waiting for the first note, knowing that it would set the tone for the duel. The young pianist looked at her and felt a mixture of anticipation and curiosity. Who was she really? What story did her music hold? He decided to start. He played a series of fast, complex notes, showcasing his technical skill and bold style. The music was powerful, confident, and full of energy. The audience reacted immediately, some clapping softly, some leaning forward, impressed by the speed and precision. He smiled inwardly, feeling the thrill of commanding the room with his music. Then she began to play. Her hands moved with grace, but not with speed or force. The melody was simple at first, almost understated. The young pianist glanced at her, expecting her style to be easy, perhaps lacking in power. But as the notes filled the hall, something unexpected happened. The melody she played was gentle yet profound. It seemed to touch each person in the room in a different way. The notes were soft, but carried an emotional depth that could not be measured by technique alone. The young pianist felt a strange sensation, as if the music was speaking directly to his heart. He paused mid-piece for a brief moment, caught off guard by the feeling of connection her playing created. The audience was mesmerized. People who had been skeptical or just curious were now completely absorbed. They could feel the sorrow and beauty in every note, the story that the music told without a single word. Some closed their eyes, letting the melody wash over them. Others held their breath, afraid to break the fragile spell that had been cast. The young pianist realized that this was different from anything he had experienced before. He had played in countless competitions, concerts, and festivals, but never had music moved him in this way. He looked at the Japanese woman. Though she had not yet reached the more complex parts of her piece, the emotion was already overwhelming. It was as if the music carried memories, pain, hope, and dreams all at once. He tried to continue, attempting to play louder, faster, more technically impressive notes. But no matter how hard he tried, the simplicity and depth of her melody outshone him. The contrast was undeniable. His confidence wavered, replaced by awe and a strange sense of humility. For the first time, he felt that winning was not just about skill, it was about understanding. Feeling and connecting through music, the duel had only just begun. But already the young pianist knew that this would be an experience that would stay with him forever. The Japanese woman played with a quiet strength, her music weaving a story that words could never capture. The audience remained silent, caught in a shared moment of wonder and emotion. In that first part of the duel, something had shifted. What had started as a confident challenge had become a journey of discovery. The young pianist realized that music was more than notes and speed. It was a language of the soul. And in that realization, he felt both humbled and inspired, knowing that this duel was not just about competition, but about understanding the true power of music. The music hall remained silent, the echoes of the first notes still lingering in the air. The young pianist felt a flutter of nerves he had never experienced before. The Japanese woman continued to play, her fingers moving with elegance and precision. Yet every note seemed to hold a story that went beyond the keys. The melody was soft, almost like a whisper, but it carried weight, depth, and an emotional truth that struck everyone in the room as he listened. The young pianist began to notice the small details in her playing, the gentle pauses between phrases, the subtle changes in tempo, the way she let some notes linger while rushing past others. It was not just music. It was breathing. It was life. He felt as if he were witnessing a conversation between her soul and the world. Each note was a word, each phrase a sentence, each passage a paragraph of an untold story. The audience, too, was captivated. Some sat with their eyes closed, letting the music flow through them. Some leaned forward, their faces softening, as if they could feel the emotions themselves. Others whispered to their neighbors, commenting on the beauty, the sadness, or the peace the music brought. But no one clapped or interrupted. They knew this moment was too fragile to break with applause. The young pianist had been preparing for this duel for months in his mind, imagining himself playing grand, complicated pieces that would leave the audience gasping in awe. But now, sitting across from her, he realized that no amount of technical skill could compete with the depth of feeling she brought to every note. He felt a wave of humility wash over him, a sensation unfamiliar and uncomfortable, yet strangely exhilarating. He decided to slow down, to listen more, to try to understand rather than dominate. He realized that the duel was no longer just about proving who was better. It was about connection, about learning from each other. He took a deep breath and let his fingers hover above the keys. Waiting for the right moment to respond, the Japanese woman seemed to sense the shift. Her eyes briefly met his, and he saw a flicker of acknowledgement. A silent understanding that music was not about competition, but about expression. She continued her melody, and it became even more intricate, layering soft harmonies and delicate rhythms that created a tapestry of sound. Each note seemed carefully chosen, yet effortless. Like the wind shaping leaves on a tree, the young pianist found himself smiling, not with arrogance, but with admiration. He had never met someone who could play with such emotional precision, who could make music feel alive in such a human way. He realized that the duel was teaching him something more valuable than victory. It was teaching him to listen, to feel, to let go of pride and allow music to guide him as she played. Memories and emotions began to surface within him. He thought of his first piano lessons, the excitement and frustration, the long hours spent perfecting scales and pieces. He remembered the times he had played alone, the way music had been a companion, a friend, and sometimes a source of solace in moments of loneliness. Now, her playing seemed to reach into those memories, awakening feelings he had buried beneath ambition and confidence. The audience could sense the transformation happening on stage. What had begun as a duel was becoming a shared experience, a journey of emotions that connected performer and listener. People shifted in their seats, leaning closer, feeling the story unfold through sound. Some wiped tears from their eyes, moved by the simple yet profound beauty of the music. Others whispered prayers or silent wishes, as if the melody spoke to their hearts in a way words never could. The young pianist knew he had to respond, but he did not want to interrupt the flow of her expression. He closed his eyes and let himself be guided by the music. Slowly he began to play, not with speed or technical flash, but with thoughtfulness and care. He matched her pauses, echoed her phrases, and added gentle harmonies that complemented her melody. It was no longer a duel. It was a conversation, a dialogue between two musicians, telling their own story yet listening to the other as he played. He felt a deep sense of connection, a feeling that went beyond notes and keys. He could feel her intention, her emotion, and her dedication to every sound. It was as if the music itself had become a living bridge, linking to hearts, to minds, and to souls. The audience felt it too, as if they were witnessing something sacred, something rare and precious. The Japanese woman continued to play, and now her music seemed to expand, filling every corner of the hall with a gentle, sorrowful beauty. Her notes were simple, yet profound, each one a brushstroke painting a picture of longing, hope, and quiet resilience. The young pianist responded, matching her emotional depth, allowing himself to be vulnerable and open. He realized that this was what true music was about, not competition. It's not applause, but honesty, connection, and expression. Time seemed to lose meaning as they played. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, yet no one noticed or cared. The outside world had disappeared, leaving only the sound of piano keys, the soft breathing of the performers, and the captivated audience. Every person present was caught in the spell, held together by the invisible thread of shared emotion. At one point, the young pianist faltered slightly, a note slipping through his fingers, and for a brief moment, he felt panic. But then he heard her response, a gentle, flowing continuation of the melody, and he realized that perfection was not the goal. The beauty was in the connection, in the way they could create something together that neither could achieve alone. He adjusted, flowing with the music, and the moment became even more powerful. The Japanese woman glanced at him occasionally, not with judgment or competition, but with encouragement. A silent invitation to keep going, to keep expressing. The young pianist felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect that went beyond words. They were no longer rivals. They were collaborators, partners in a musical journey that was unfolding in real time. The audience could feel the transformation too. The energy in the room was electric, yet gentle, a mix of awe, emotion, and quiet reverence. People who had come to witness a duel were now witnessing a moment of human connection, a reminder of the power of art to transcend boundaries and touch hearts. Some held hands, some closed their eyes, some simply sat in silence, absorbing every note. As the music continued, the young pianist realized that he was learning something invaluable. He had always measured himself by speed, complexity, and recognition. But now he understood that music was about listening, responding, and expressing the truth of the heart. He felt gratitude for the Japanese woman, for her presence, for the lesson she was teaching without words. The Japanese woman's playing grew more expressive, more sorrowful yet beautiful, like a river flowing through valleys of memory and emotion. The young pianist matched her tone, not trying to outshine, but to honor the story she was telling. Together, their music became a tapestry of emotions, each note intertwined with the other, creating something neither could have achieved alone. By the end of this part of the duel, the young pianist felt a profound shift within himself. The initial thrill of challenge and competition had transformed into a deep appreciation for the art of listening. the courage to be vulnerable, and the power of expressing emotion through music. The Japanese woman's presence and playing had awakened something within him that went beyond talent or technique. It was the human side of music, the heart and soul that connected performer and listener alike. As the last notes of this section lingered in the hall, the audience exhaled softly, as if waking from a shared dream. The young pianist and the Japanese woman exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had begun together. It was clear that the duel was far from over, but already it had become a transformative experience, one that would remain with them and everyone present for a lifetime. The music hall was still, yet the energy in the room was palpable. Every note the Japanese woman played seemed to reach into the souls of the listeners, carrying a mixture of sorrow, hope, and quiet determination. The young pianist felt it too, a deep resonance that went beyond skill or technique. He could feel the story behind each phrase, the unspoken emotions that shaped every melody. The duel had evolved into something neither of them could have predicted. It was no longer a competition, but a shared experience of music and emotion. He watched her fingers move. Precise yet fluid, each key touched with intention. Her hands seemed to float above the piano, yet they commanded attention with every note. The young pianist tried to match her, but he realized that no matter how fast or complex his playing was, it could not convey the same depth of feeling. He understood, finally, that this was the essence of music: to connect, to communicate, to express what words could not. The audience was mesmerized. Some had tears in their eyes. Others were leaning forward, completely absorbed. There was a quiet reverence, a collective understanding that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The young pianist felt a chill run down his spine. He had never played in front of an audience that could feel every subtle shift in emotion, that could sense the story behind the music. And he had never experienced a fellow performer who could guide him into feeling it as deeply as he was feeling now. He took a deep breath and decided to respond, but not with speed or complexity. He let his hands rest lightly on the keys, listening to her melody, feeling its contours and textures. Slowly, he began to add his own interpretation, mirroring her pauses, echoing her phrases, and weaving his own emotions into the fabric of the music. It was a dialogue, a conversation of hearts expressed through sound. As he played, memories surfaced. He remembered the first time he had sat at a piano, the nervous excitement, the hours of practice, the thrill of discovering that music could carry his emotions beyond himself. Now he realized that those memories were being touched by her music, reshaped and deepened. Her playing made him confront feelings he had long ignored, fears, regrets, and unspoken hopes. The sorrow in her notes became his own, yet it was not painful. It was illuminating, transformative. The Japanese woman seemed to sense his engagement. Her eyes met his briefly, a silent acknowledgement, and her fingers moved with renewed expression. The melody became more intricate, layering emotions like colors in a painting. Each note was deliberate, yet effortless. The young pianist found himself completely absorbed, no longer thinking about winning, no longer concerned with impressing the audience. He was simply present, letting the music flow through him and respond to hers. The audience was equally captivated. Some held their breath, afraid to break the delicate spell of the performance. Others let tears fall freely, moved by the purity and honesty of the music. It was as if the notes carried the stories of all those who had ever felt love, loss, hope, and longing. Every person in the room could sense that this was a rare and unrepeatable moment, something that transcended ordinary performance. The young pianist felt his confidence shifting. What he had thought was a duel of skill had become a lesson in humility, empathy, and understanding. He realized that true music was not about demonstrating superiority. It was about expressing truth, connecting hearts, and touching lives. And the Japanese woman was teaching him that, not through words, but through the sheer power of her music. Her melody shifted again. Softer now, almost fragile, yet filled with a profound emotional weight. It was like a whisper carried on the wind, intimate and personal, yet accessible to everyone in the hall. The young pianist responded with care, letting his own emotions guide him rather than his fingers. He felt a delicate balance forming, a harmony between their two musical voices. It was not about one overpowering the other. It was about blending, creating something larger than either of them could achieve alone. As they continued, he noticed the subtle expressions on her face. She was not focused on him, not thinking about winning or losing. She was immersed in the story she was telling. There was a calm determination in her eyes, a quiet power that demanded respect. The young pianist felt both admiration and inspiration. He had never played with anyone who could convey such depth of emotion without uttering a single word. The audience could feel the tension and release in the music. Some were leaning forward, completely absorbed. Others had closed their eyes, letting the notes wash over them like a gentle tide. The energy in the room was palpable, a shared heartbeat that connected performer, listener, and music in a single moment of profound human experience. The young pianist's own playing began to change. He had started with boldness and confidence, trying to showcase his skills, but now he was guided by empathy and feeling. Each note was chosen carefully, each phrase shaped by the emotional dialogue between them. He felt as if the music was speaking directly to his soul, and he responded in kind. Letting the melodies intertwine, the Japanese woman introduced subtle shifts in rhythm, unexpected pauses, and delicate harmonies that challenged him to follow. He listened intently, adjusting, responding, and adding his own voice. The duel had transformed into a delicate dance, a conversation without words, a bridge between two hearts. Time seemed to stretch and blur. Minutes felt like seconds, and seconds felt like minutes. The audience was suspended in the moment, completely engaged, yet utterly calm. Every note resonated with clarity and purpose, and every silence between phrases was filled with unspoken emotion. The young pianist realized that he was learning something beyond music. He was learning patience, attentiveness, and the courage to be vulnerable. He had always measured success by applause and recognition, but now he understood that the true reward was in the connection. In the shared experience of expressing something deeply human, the Japanese woman continued her melody, weaving sorrow and hope, fragility and strength, in a way that left the young pianist breathless. He found himself responding instinctively, letting his heart guide his fingers rather than his ego. The duel had become a collaboration, a merging of souls through sound, a testament to the power of human expression. The audience, too, seemed to sense the transformation on stage. They were silent yet fully present, absorbing the story unfolding in the music. Some had tears in their eyes, others smiled softly, and a few simply held their hands over their hearts, feeling the emotional resonance of every note. It was a moment that transcended competition, a moment that reminded everyone present of the beauty and power of music as a universal language. By the end of this part of the duel, the young pianist felt a profound shift within himself. He had begun with arrogance and confidence, ready to prove his superiority, but he was now humbled, inspired, and deeply moved. The Japanese woman had taught him that music was not about winning or losing, not about technical skill alone, but about connecting, expressing, and feeling. The duel had only progressed to its midpoint. Yet already it had become a transformative experience. The young pianist looked at her with newfound respect, admiration, and gratitude. He had come seeking a challenge, but he had found a teacher, a guide, and a partner in a musical journey that would stay with him forever. The Japanese woman's serene expression reflected the same awareness, a quiet acknowledgement that this was more than a duel. It was an exchange of hearts, a shared moment of beauty, and a story told through the language of music. The music hall felt alive, but in a quiet, almost sacred way. The young pianist could feel the weight of the moment pressing gently on his shoulders. The Japanese woman continued to play, each note like a brushstroke painting a story that no words could capture. Her hands glided across the keys, delicate yet precise, as if every sound carried a memory, a feeling, or a secret. He tried to keep up, but he realized that this was no longer a test of speed or complexity. It was a challenge of heart and soul, and he had to match the honesty of her music rather than its technical skill. Each phrase she played seemed to reach deeper into him, stirring emotions he had long kept hidden. He felt a mixture of awe, humility, and even sorrow, as if the music was speaking truths he had yet to accept. The audience was equally captivated. Some had tears in their eyes, some whispered softly to themselves, and others simply sat, frozen, as if afraid to break the spell. The room was heavy with emotion, yet it was a gentle, enveloping presence, a shared understanding that something extraordinary was unfolding. The young pianist took a deep breath, allowing himself to be guided by the music rather than his ego. He began to play with careful attention, letting his fingers follow the emotions rather than a planned sequence. He responded to her phrasing, matched her pauses, and added gentle harmonies that complemented her melody. It was no longer about outshining. It was about joining, blending, and creating something together. As he played, memories rose to the surface. He remembered his first piano lessons, the joy of discovering how to make sound flow, the frustration of mistakes, and the long hours spent perfecting scales. He realized that all of those experiences had led him to this moment, where music was not just notes, but a bridge between two people's hearts. Her playing had unlocked these memories and feelings, and he felt both vulnerable and grateful. The Japanese woman seemed to sense his engagement. She introduced subtle shifts in her rhythm, delicate pauses, and nuanced expressions that challenged him to follow. Each note was intentional, each silence meaningful. The young pianist adjusted, listening carefully, responding with honesty, and adding his own emotions to the conversation. The duel had transformed into a dialogue, shared story told through the language of music. The sorrow in her playing became more pronounced, yet it was not heavy or dark. It was tender, human, and relatable. He could feel the emotion as if it were his own, memories of loss, longing, and hope intertwined with the melody. The audience, too, seemed to absorb it, some nodding gently, some closing their eyes. Letting the feelings wash over them, he realized that his own playing was changing. The confidence and arrogance that had carried him into this duel were giving way to humility and understanding. He was no longer trying to impress or dominate. He was learning to listen, to respond, and to express his true self through the music. Every note he played was an act of vulnerability, a statement of presence, and a connection to the emotion she was sharing. The Japanese woman's expression remained calm, serene, yet her playing spoke volumes. Her melody weaved sorrow with hope, fragility with strength, and every shift in tone or rhythm was deliberate. The young pianist followed, letting the music guide him, and felt an unspoken bond forming between them. It was a partnership, an unplanned collaboration, and a lesson in the power of empathy and attention. The audience could feel the emotional dialogue unfolding. There was a silence, not of boredom, but of absolute focus, as if every listener were holding their breath to absorb each nuance. The energy in the room was collective, a shared heartbeat that resonated with the music. People felt connected not only to the performers but to each other. Brought together by the vulnerability and beauty of the sounds, he noticed subtle shifts in her playing, a rise and fall of intensity, the occasional soft tremble in a note, and the delicate way she allowed some sounds to linger. It was not just music, it was storytelling. Each phrase conveyed a journey, a moment of reflection, a glimmer of hope, or an ache of sorrow. He tried to mirror her sensitivity, to respond not mechanically but with feeling. Adding his own voice to the conversation, the young pianist realized that winning was no longer the point. The duel had become a shared journey of expression and understanding. Each note he played was a response, each phrase an acknowledgement of her presence and intention. He felt a profound connection not only to the music, but to her as a fellow artist. She was teaching him, guiding him, challenging him to embrace emotion and truth over technical display. The audience remained silent yet fully engaged. Some had tears streaming down their faces, others sat in awe, their breaths synchronized with the ebb and flow of the melody. The room was heavy with unspoken emotion, a collective recognition that they were witnessing more than a performance. They were witnessing human hearts speaking to one another through music. The Japanese woman's melody grew more intricate, layering subtle harmonies and soft embellishments that required careful attention. The young pianist followed, adapting, listening, and responding with sincerity. It was a delicate balance, a conversation without words, a dance of emotion and sound. He realized that the music was teaching him patience, attentiveness, and the courage to be vulnerable. He played with care, letting each note carry intention and feeling. The initial thrill of challenge and competition had transformed into something deeper, a lesson in connection, empathy, and expression. He could feel the sorrow in her notes, the hope, the resilience. And he responded with his own emotions, creating a tapestry of sound that was shared, rather than contested, as the music flowed. He noticed the subtle details in her expression and technique, the slight arch of her fingers, the tilt of her head, the way her eyes softened at certain phrases. Every movement was purposeful, yet natural, a reflection of the emotions embedded in her playing. He began to mirror these subtle cues, not in imitation, but in understanding, letting them guide his own interpretation. The audience was deeply moved. Some whispered softly to themselves, others held their hands over their hearts, and a few simply closed their eyes, feeling the raw honesty of the performance. The energy was collective, a shared experience that transcended language and culture. Connecting everyone in the hall through emotion and sound, the young pianist felt a sense of awe and humility. He had come to prove himself, to demonstrate his skill, but now he understood that the true purpose of music was not victory. It was expression, connection, and the courage to reveal the depths of one's own heart. The Japanese woman had taught him this without words, through the simplicity, clarity, and honesty of her playing. As the section of music drew to a close, the young pianist felt a profound shift within himself. The sorrow and beauty he had felt were not only in her music, but now also a part of his own expression. He had learned to listen, respond, and collaborate in a way that went beyond technique or performance. It was a lesson in humanity, empathy, and the power of shared experience. The audience exhaled softly as the final notes lingered, a quiet acknowledgement of the extraordinary moment they had witnessed. The young pianist and the Japanese woman exchanged a brief glance, a silent understanding passing between them. The duel had become a shared journey, a transformative experience, and a testament to the power of music to connect hearts and souls. In that moment, the young pianist realized that he had been changed forever. He had come seeking a challenge, but he had found something far more valuable, a teacher, a partner, and a reminder of the true essence of music. The Japanese woman's serene presence and emotional depth had guided him to a new understanding, one that would stay with him for the rest of his life. And as the audience slowly began to clap softly at first, then more vigorously, he felt gratitude, awe, and a quiet, enduring joy that went beyond words. The music hall was filled with a quiet intensity as the final part of the duel began. The young pianist and the Japanese woman had reached a point where words were no longer necessary. Every note, every pause, every subtle shift in melody communicated more than any conversation ever could. The audience sensed this, their attention focused entirely on the stage, as if witnessing a sacred exchange between two hearts through the language of music. The Japanese woman started softly, her fingers gliding over the keys with effortless grace. Her melody was tender, yet filled with an emotional weight that seemed to touch the deepest corners of everyone present. The young pianist listened intently, letting her music guide him. He had learned to follow, to respond, and to feel the emotions behind each note, rather than merely trying to impress with speed or technique. As he began to play, infused his own emotions into the music. Every note carried sincerity. Every phrase was shaped by vulnerability and empathy. The duel had transformed into a collaboration, a conversation without words, where both pianists shared their stories, fears, and hopes. Their melodies intertwined, creating a tapestry of sound that was both complex and profoundly human. The audience was captivated. Some held their breath, some had tears in their eyes, and others simply sat in awe, absorbing the emotions that flowed freely from the stage. It was clear that what was happening was more than a duel. It was an artistic and emotional experience that transcended competition. People could feel the honesty and sincerity of the performers, and that connection resonated deeply within them. The young pianist felt a sense of transformation within himself. He had entered this duel-seeking challenge and recognition, but now he realized that the true essence of music was not in winning or losing, but in connecting, expressing, and understanding. Every note he played was a reflection of that realization, a demonstration of growth, and a tribute to the power of vulnerability. The Japanese woman responded with subtle shifts in tempo and dynamics, her melody weaving sorrow, hope, and serenity in a way that was both delicate and powerful. The young pianist followed, adjusting and blending his playing to complement hers. They moved together through the music, creating a harmony that was not just technical, but deeply emotional. It was a dialogue between two souls, communicated through sound, felt by everyone in the room. Memories and emotions surfaced within the young pianist as he played. He thought of his first lessons, the hours of practice, the moments of frustration and triumph. Now, those experiences were reframed, seen through the lens of empathy and emotional connection. The sorrow, beauty, and hope in the Japanese woman's music awakened something deep within him, and he responded in kind, allowing his own feelings to guide his performance. The audience remained fully engaged. Sensing the depth and authenticity of the performance, they were not just spectators, but participants in the emotional journey unfolding before them. Each note resonated not only in the hall but within each listener, evoking memories, dreams, and emotions of their own. The collective energy was both powerful and gentle, testament to the transformative power of music. As the duel progressed, the young pianist realized that he had been humbled and inspired. His initial confidence and desire to prove himself had been replaced by respect, admiration, and a deep sense of gratitude. The Japanese woman had taught him something invaluable, that music was not about dominance or recognition, but about honesty, connection, and the courage to express one's true self. He played with renewed understanding, letting each note flow naturally, guided by emotion rather than ego. The Japanese woman continued to weave her melody with subtle intricacies, and he responded, allowing the music to become a conversation that transcended words. Together, they created something greater than the sum of their parts. A musical dialogue that was heartfelt, sincere, and transformative. The audience was visibly moved. Some wiped tears from their eyes, others held their hands over their hearts, and a few simply sat in silence, absorbing the beauty and emotion of the moment. The room felt united in a shared experience, connected by the honesty and vulnerability of the music. Every person present could feel the profound humanity that flowed from the stage. The young pianist felt a sense of peace and fulfillment he had never known before. He had entered this duel-seeking challenge, excitement, and recognition, but he had discovered something far greater, the joy of genuine connection, the power of expressing emotion honestly, and the transformative effect of shared artistic experience. He understood that the duel was not about winning, but about growth, empathy, and human connection. The Japanese woman played with quiet strength, her melody carrying a sense of closure, yet leaving room for reflection. The young pianist matched her, weaving his own emotions into the final phrases, allowing the music to resonate fully in the hearts of all present. The interplay between their melodies created a sense of completion, a harmony that felt both natural and profoundly meaningful. As the final notes lingered in the air, the audience exhaled softly, a collective acknowledgement of the extraordinary performance they had witnessed. There was silence, not of emptiness, but of respect and reverence. Every person present felt the emotional impact of the music, and many felt changed, touched in ways that words could never capture. The young pianist and the Japanese woman exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. There was no need for words. Their music had spoken volumes. They had begun as rivals, but they were leaving as collaborators, partners in a shared journey of expression and connection. The duel had become a profound lesson in humility, empathy, and the transformative power of music. The audience slowly erupted into applause, first softly, then more enthusiastically. Some people cheered, others clapped with tears in their eyes, and a few stood, acknowledging the extraordinary human experience they had witnessed. The young pianist and the Japanese woman bowed respectfully, acknowledging the audience and each other. There was a sense of closure, yet the emotional resonance of the performance lingered in the room as they stepped away from their pianos. The young pianist felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had come seeking challenge, but he had found inspiration, growth, and a connection that transcended competition. The Japanese woman's serene expression reflected the same understanding, quiet acknowledgement that they had shared something extraordinary. The duel had ended, but the lessons, emotions, and memories it created would remain with them forever. The young pianist realized that this experience had changed him not just as a musician, but as a person. He had learned to listen, to respond, and to connect deeply with others through the universal language of music. He had discovered that true mastery was not in dominating or impressing, but in honesty, empathy, and the courage to express one's inner truth. As the audience began to leave, still talking softly among themselves, the young pianist felt a sense of fulfillment and peace. He knew that he would carry this experience with him for the rest of his life, a reminder of the power of music to connect, heal, and transform. The Japanese woman's presence, her music, and the emotional journey they shared had left an indelible mark on his heart. The hall slowly emptied, but the young pianist lingered for a moment, reflecting on everything he had experienced. He understood now that the duel had been far more than a challenge or a contest. It had been a journey of self-discovery, a lesson in empathy, and a celebration of the human capacity for emotion, connection, and artistic expression. He took one last look at the piano, feeling a deep gratitude for the music, for the Japanese woman, and for the audience that had shared in this extraordinary moment. In that final part of the duel, the young pianist realized that he had been transformed. What began as a simple challenge had become a profound journey of emotion, connection, and understanding. The Japanese woman had shown him the true essence of music, and he had responded with honesty, vulnerability, and respect. Together, they had created something that would live on in memory, a testament to the power of human expression, the beauty of collaboration, and the lasting impact of sharing one's heart through art.